What are challenges that CEP logistic network modeling should overcome? Let's find out. Hello, Christian. So for today, there is a topic which is really interesting, always very interesting for me, logistic network modeling. Is the current software solution efficient enough to do it for parcel and postal operators? This is big questions I always had because I have done about 7, 8 national network, logistic network modeling, and each time on very different technologies from the just developers which or create the code to the very advanced, well-known international solutions. But every time I had the problem, all this software are created on very retail type or distribution type of modeling. So from the central warehouse to the client. Postal or CP networks are different. They have this movement flows from the different each point ship and each point receive. They have different legs. So you have this international national network, sometimes international network, national network, hubs and depots. Then depots to the some middle points. Sometimes it's middle mile, sometimes it's last mile, and always optimization on one part impacted a lot the another one, but software struggled to optimize all of them together. And again, optimization of transport versus optimization of infrastructure. This is always a problem, and we had to make a lot of analysis outside of the software. That's why I thought it's absolutely interesting topic because everybody in logistic industry finally have this modeling issue. What do you think? There are some solutions which are ready, or still you think that you need to do a lot of assumptions and a lot of additional modeling and put all together separately?
I think this is, if you talk about an elephant in the room, this is a huge elephant. Because I think the old way of doing modeling, that is absolutely not enough. We can say that. And there are many reasons for it. I mean, the reasons is that we are now in a world which is 10 times more complex than it ever has been before. And we had challenges before as well. Especially when you talk about the CEP operator, where you had a mix of a parcel flow, you had a mix of a letter flow, and you had a mix of a freight flow. Now we have additions where we're talking about speed as well as being a challenge. So in the way that you're looking into how are we going to do this in the future, I think that you need to again have a certain clarity on how can you simplify your own products. You need to take your products into some kind of standardization. Just to give you an example, let's say, okay, fine. What have this locker networks meant for all of us as operators right now is that many of us have just put another network on top of the network we already have. Because maybe we had a network which was based on home deliveries and PUDO points, and then you just challenge it by putting up another network which is in the same place with the lockers. Just to give you an idea, that means that when you are sorting in the sorting center, then you need to make sure that you actually have directions enough to handle that as well. And then you have on top of that, you have maybe introduction of different speeds. Some are talking about, should we have a same day speed? Should we have a day to day? Do we have a multi-day speed where we are trying to see how we can do? Then we have the configurations of all. How are we going to have the old traditional hub and spoke models are getting challenged because there always was tons of distribution offices because we had also quite manual processes. Then when you say, okay, fine, we're going to centralize this, then you come to transport and how are you going to optimize the transport models between them? I'm just saying that this is not a simple world. It's actually an extremely complex world. And I think that you have to define on saying, okay, fine, where are we? And I think we talked about in an earlier call about modularity. And I think that you need to make sure that you are putting in some of the best products you can find for different areas. And I think that this subject has become quite complex for especially postal operators. And I think postal operators need to speak together in order to more or less help each other in how to get a grip on it, because it's something that is extremely challenging.
Yeah, what I see among postal operators, the classic, I would say, the national incumbents, is that they want to reduce number of sorting centers because the previous network were based on this manual letter sorting, and if they reduce, they start to be very far from the last mile, and if they start to be very far from last mile, it will add a lot of additional cost to parcels. This is what I see. That's why this challenge is was difficult.
So, you have these classical mistakes also that you're making a network based on averages, and you have to make sure that you also can handle the peak. You forget to count the number of touches that you have on an item, the physical touches. Every time,
Mhm,
always that when you have a physical touch, you have a cost. So what you need to make sure of is that you design also your network that it has as few touches as possible. And I think that 4 years ago, I think it's 4 or 5 years ago, we actually presented to our board some thoughts we had about a vision, and a vision we call touchless, where we actually tried to see, okay, fine, how can we work towards a future in maybe 3032 or something like that, where we are not touching the parcels at all with physical human hands. Of course, we need to still make sure that they are sorted and touched by machine hands or by automation, robotation, or whatever it is, in order to make it as cheap as possible, in order to get the reach that we want to have for the cost that we actually can accept. I think that you need to have some kinds of direction what you're gonna do, because just handling on what's happening in the market in a very short time is going to be extremely expensive for you, because it is very complex, as you say, to make the right decision without taking a step back and seeing, okay, fine, what are you actually doing? I remember back in the days when you had the central OCR systems for sorting your letters, and you put it into a routes organization and stuff like that. You had discussions about, yeah, but if you have to take the letter from an island that needed to be sorted in our own island, should you take it off at your own island, or should you send it into a central place to become, central sorted and put into order in order for getting the mailman to take it out in a route oriented, or should you put those few letters in the stack in between? And we many times chose to make it the standardized way, because it actually was more simpler to control, and we didn't add complexity to the process with manual handling. You really need to be looking at it from a point where where you're living on this island. You think it's completely crazy to take a letter and send it back in the system, and have it sent back to the island. Yes, but if you look at the whole picture, it might be. This was just an example from the old days, but you of course have the same examples on how you're gonna have parcels going back and forth, and are you gonna have an open network, or you're not gonna have an open network? There are tons of these questions that you need to answer yourself before you actually try to figure out how you're going to solve the problem.
So you brought this topic, which I understand that first we need to understand and redesign processes, and then we can go to modeling, because modeling is only kind of exercise, final exercise on algorithms, but processes is something which you need to decide how you want to run your operations. And before processes, you have products, as you said, standardization of the product, standardization of pricing list.
Just going to simplify it. If you look at what is InPost doing today, InPost is having a network with where they are concentrating on lockers. Yes, but now in order to get the reach, they are introducing pull-up shops. They're going with partnership where they're. But what we see is that their model is very strong when it comes to locker sorting. So what they're trying to move towards is actually to move these pull-up points into locker points, because that is their core. And goes back to what are your product. Your product is the one that is defining how you want to do your future. And then you work towards that way, because you have a strong product and you have a strong process, and then your modeling becomes more simple. The less control you have over your products and the less control you have over your processes, the modelings will be much more complex. And this is what we should take as a learning.
So I would say we started, the initial idea was to discuss about solution, the software solution for modeling, and we find that the problem is much more complex. And we start from the products processes of the processes, when we can go to modeling and decide how finally we will see it and how finally we will model it.